I'll be sure I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Ever wondered how one furious swipe of a razor blade by Davies of the Kinks back in '64 not only birthed an iconic guitar sound, but also sparked a revolution in the world of amplifiers? Today, we are looking back at the legendary recording of You Really Got Me and uncovering the untold story of how this single breakout changed the face of rock and roll. Stay tuned, because you don't want to miss this iconic journey. Let's begin. So, here's the scoop. Legend has it that around 1964, Dave Davies, the guitar maestro of the Kinks, unknowingly stumbled upon the recipe for heavy metal. Imagine this. He's jamming away, and suddenly, bam! He plays his guitar through a busted speaker, giving birth to that iconic distorto sound. Little did he know that this raw, aggressive riff would go on to influence rockers for generations to come, inspiring them to crank up the volume to 11. Let's go back to the swinging 1960s. The airwaves are dominated by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and it's all about love ballads and fan screams. But behind the scenes is Dave Davies, quietly cooking up something groundbreaking. See, the Kinks might not have been psychedelic or heavy rock giants, but Dave's influence was like a secret sauce in the musical stew of the late 60s. Sure, everyone talks about the Beatles, but there's more to the story. While the Beatles were harmonizing and experimenting with Sgt. Pepper, Dave Davies was quietly brewing a sonic revolution. The British invasion wasn't just about the big names, it was home to unsung heroes like Dave, who played a crucial role in shaping the sound of an era. The Beatles have been name-dropped by every rock star from Ozzy Osbourne to Bruce Springsteen, but the Kinks had a more undercover impact. It's like they were the secret ingredient in the rock and roll recipe. As musicologists dig into the roots of metal, they often point fingers at iconic tracks like The Who's I Can See for Miles, the Beatles' Helter Skelter, and Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love. But there's one more song that deserves a spot in that conversation. You Really Got Me by the Kinks. Here's the twist. You Really Got Me dropped in 1964, a good 3 years before the heavy hitters of 67, 68, and 69. Dave Davies and his guitar wizardry were ahead of the curve, laying the groundwork for what would become the unmistakable sound of heavy metal. Alright, buckle up, because the story behind You Really Got Me takes an unexpected turn. You see, when Ray Davies, the brains behind the Kinks, first penned this iconic track in 1964, he had something entirely different in mind. Imagine this riff not on a guitar, but as a smooth saxophone line in a low-tempo jazz blues tune. Yeah, talk about a plot twist. Now, enter Dave Davies, the rebel with a cause and the man we can thank for the heavy metal vibes. Instead of sticking to the plan, Dave took that saxophone riff and went rogue with his guitar, throwing in some wild power chords. The result? A sudden burst of energy and edge that would change the game. In June 1964, the band laid down an early version of the track, but it was still missing that heavy metal magic. The turning point came when 17-year-old Dave, fueled by teenage angst and a rebellious spirit, reached a turning point in his life. Take a look at this. My childhood sweetheart Sue got pregnant and we wanted to get married, Dave spilled to The Guardian in 2013. But our parents said we were too young and they split us up. I was a rebellious, angry kid anyway, but that had a profound effect on me. I was full of rage. In the depths of his despair, Dave found himself in a dark place, fooling around with a razor blade. Now here's the really interesting part. Instead of going down a dangerous path, he decided to take out his frustration on his guitar setup. I'll teach it, he thought, slashing the speaker cone of his little green El Pico amplifier. The result was amazing. That single rebellious act changed the entire sound of his guitar. But Dave didn't stop there. He he wired up that modified amp to another Vox AC30, cranking up the volume to new heights. The result was a distorted, aggressive sound that would become the hallmark of heavy metal. Now, you might be wondering, how did Dave's rebellious act in his bedroom translate into the iconic heavy metal anthem we know today? Well, here's where Shel Tammy, the band's producer, enters the scene with his magic touch. Shel took Dave's discovery into the studio, armed with his expertise to crank that distorted sound up to 11. In the words of Tammy himself, while working as a studio engineer in LA, I'd figured out various techniques to make stuff sound even more powerful. On You Really Got Me, I recorded the guitar on 2 channels, one distorting and the other not. The combination makes the sound seem louder. We'd even kick Dave's amp as we walked past to make it sound rougher. Talk about hands-on production. So Dave's damaged little green El Pico, the birthplace of distortion and guitar amplification, got the VIP treatment in the studio. Combined with those choppy power chords from You Really Got Me, this defective speaker cone truly got people's ears buzzing. On August 4th, 1964, the Kinks unleash You Really Got Me upon the world. Little did they know that this track would echo through the halls of rock history. Jimi Hendrix himself, the guitar virtuoso extraordinaire, recognized the significance. In a chance encounter on a plane bound for Stockholm, Hendrix turned to Dave and said, "You know, that guitar riff you did on You Really Got Me was a real landmark." Imagine being endorsed by Hendrix. Now that's a legendary compliment. Early years of the Kinks. Come with me back to the early 60s and step into the vibrant world of the Kinks. Picture Muswell Hill in northern London, 1963, the birthplace of this rhythm and blues sensation that would soon become a British archetype. Formed by the dynamic duo of brothers Ray and Dave Davies, the Kinks emerged as a rhythm and blues band with a twist of sharp social observation and the theatrical flair of the British music hall. The lineup was solidified with the addition of Pete Quaife and Mick Avery, completing the powerhouse quartet. Their journey took a groundbreaking turn with the release of the 3rd single, You Really Got Me. Built on those electrifying power chords, this track catapulted the Kinks into the limelight. It wasn't just a song, it was a seismic shift in the creative exploration of rhythm and blues by white musicians. Think of it as a major musical event that resonated with the early Rolling Stones, influenced the mid-60s American garage punk scene, and even left its mark on early 70s heavy metal. But the Kinks weren't content with sticking to a single formula. After international hits like All Day and All of the Night and Tired of Waiting for You, they embarked on a musical journey that showcased their versatility. Cue See My Friends in 1965, a groundbreaking fusion of Western pop with Indian musical forms. A song that wasn't just a song, but it was an exploration of ambiguity in a tale of male bonding. The Kinks, with their foppish clothes, extremely long hair, and Ray Davies' often camp demeanor, exaggerated the androgynous image that the Rolling Stones were cultivating. It wasn't just about the music, it was about making a statement. As their impact on the American market fluctuated, the Kinks embraced their unique English identity. Social commentary became a hallmark with tunes like A Well-Respected Man, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, and the chart-topping Sunny Afternoon in 1966, where Ray Davies channeled his inner 1930s British crooner Al Bowley. Dave Davies, a little bit about him. Here's a closer look at Dave Davies, the sonic architect who reshaped the very foundations of hard rock. As a founding member of the Kinks, Dave's fingerprints are all over the distinctive distorted open chords that echoed through the universe with the release of You Really Got Me in 1964. Here's what happens. Dave, unaware of the seismic impact he's about to make, takes a razor blade to the cone of his El Pico amp. Little did he know that this unexpected act would birth one of the first mainstream examples of distortion. It's like stumbling upon a treasure chest of fuzzed out glory, and the ripple effect was colossal. Heavy metal and punk rockers in particular found inspiration in this unplanned twist of fate.
About 4 years we've been together, but we've only had the name Kinks for about 2.
He doesn't just break sonic barriers. He's a masterful songsmith, weaving tales with an artistry that few could match. Tracks like Dead End Street, Strangers, Waterloo Sunset, Death of a Clown, and the iconic Lola showcase not only lyrical prowess, but also uniquely phrased chord structures that paint vivid pictures. As the Kinks navigated through the years, their lineup may have shuffled, but at the heart of it all, the Davies brothers, Dave and Ray, stood strong. Despite their differences, their whimsical journey birthed a string of classic records, each a battering ram of unforgettable music. These tunes aren't just relics of the past, they're as impactful today as they were over 50 years ago. As Dave Davies reflects on his relationship with his brother Ray, he doesn't mince words. "Yeah, Ray and I have had words over the years," he chuckles, "but at the core of it all, it was our mutual love for each other that kept us going through it all. Family is funny because you still love them even though you're fighting with them. Sometimes we hated each other, but there was always a lot of love and a powerful bond between us. Loving someone isn't always a walk in the park, and Dave knows it well. It's not always easy to love someone," he admits, "but the love was always there. We'd argue and sometimes we wouldn't talk for ages, but it didn't matter. We could always set all of that aside, find common ground, and do something creative. So our love, bond, and creative respect for each other gave us a lot of space to venture around and stay in the proper mindset." The Kinks, despite folding their proverbial tent in 1996, are still remembered today. Now, 3 decades after their final studio offering with Phobia in 1993, fans are still hungry for more. Responding to the clamor, Dave and Ray Davies, alongside Mick Avalon, have heeded their fans' calls. The result? The Journey, Part 1. An expansive set that delves into the Kinks era from 1964 to 1975. The birth of heavy riffs. I don't think you can simply compare the Kinks to a band. They were architects of musical stories. Classics like Waterloo Sunset, Lola, and Dedicated Flower of Fashion weren't just tunes. They were character studies that paved the way for bands like The Jam, Madness, and Blur to chronicle the quirks of everyday British life. And don't even get me started on Dave's incendiary guitar riffs. Those things influenced generations from Pete Townsend to the great Jimi Hendrix himself. Legends recognizing legends, you know? Now, let's talk about the birth of heavy riffs. You've heard You Really Got Me, right? That classic riff in 1964, courtesy of Dave Davies, is like the godfather of distortion in rock. That's right, the birthplace of heavy metal owes a nod to the Kinks. Jimi Hendrix even gave them a standing ovation, metaphorically at least. But hey, where there are brothers, there are squabbles. Forget the Gallagher brothers, Ray and Dave Davies were the OG brawling siblings in rock. Those feuds lasted until the Kinks decided to call it quits in 1996. I mean, we've all heard about Ray stomping on Dave's birthday cake. Rock and roll drama at its finest. Fast forward to today, and guess what? The Davies brothers are thinking of hitting the stage again. Yep, a reunion. Dave spilled the beans to the Daily Express saying, "We spoke the other day and we're meeting up in a couple of weeks. We'll try to get back on stage. I won't tell you what it is until it's ready, but I want us to talk about doing something based on our lives."
You really got me going. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
For Kinks fans, this is like a dream come true. The only taste we got was in 2015 when Ray joined Dave on stage for a killer rendition of You Really Got Me. Nostalgia, anyone? Dave's all smiles about it these days, admitting that it's taken a while to fully appreciate the magic of their work together. He says, "I look forward to it whenever I see Ray and we talk about stuff because Ray has got such a way with words." Well, folks, you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20? Dave Davies is feeling it. At 76, he's looking back at the Kinks' heyday and spilling some tea. Surprise, surprise, it wasn't always rainbows and unicorns. In fact, he confesses, I hated it a lot of times when I was working with Ray because I'd think, oh fuck, how do I get away from this madness? And it was madness being in the Kinks. But hey, that madness birthed some magical music. Now, almost 60 years after shaking up the music scene, Dave's wearing his pride on his sleeve. He reflects on those wild times, saying, we didn't know what we were doing. The Kinks were in a constant state of screaming and shouting at each other and loving each other too. Because we didn't know what we were doing, our quest was always, what are we going to do now? That's the path we followed, reviewing everything we did along the way. We were rough kids who were learning how to express ourselves. Ray and Dave are the youngest two of 8 siblings. They had 6 older sisters. And if you're wondering where all that creativity came from, credit goes to the Davies family women. Dave spills the beans. My sisters were such strong characters. In those days, women were rarely allowed to go to the toilet without permission. But if my sisters wanted to do something, they'd do it. They knew all about expressing themselves, which is a crucial part of music. It was Mom who taught me how to manifest my creativity. I was an angry kid who had so much rage. Mom taught me all about my feelings, which I expressed through music. If I hadn't done that, I'd have ended up in a straitjacket. Or worse. That's right, my friends. Imagine a 16-year-old Dave Davies, fueled by teenage angst and a lover's quarrel, decides to take his frustrations out on his guitar amp with a razor blade. That's pretty dramatic, right? As Dave puts it, after this terrible row, I thought I was going to slash my wrist with the razor blade. I was being very theatrical. Instead, I looked at the amp and thought, I'm going to take it all out on this. And so, with the carelessness of youth, he starts slashing at the amp, not having a clue about what he's doing. Miraculously, the amp still works, but now it produces this raw, raggedy sound that Dave finds fantastic. Little did he know, he had just birthed the iconic distorted guitar sound that is unforgettable. Not everyone was on board though. The studio engineers, set in their ways, refused to record the amp's unpolished noise. It went against everything they were taught about recording, Dave chuckles. They hated that sound, and our record company wasn't keen either. But we told them if they didn't record it the way we wanted, then the band would split up. Well, we all know how that story goes. You Really Got Me became the first of the Kinks' 3 #1 singles, followed by Tired of Waiting for You and Sunny Afternoon. According to Dave, young people wanted that rough sound. When I was 16, I couldn't articulate how I felt about my girlfriend. I wanted to both hug her and scream at her. And that's how You Really Got Me sounds. We were a very primordial band in a way. Of course, with great creativity came great clashes. Dave's fights with drummer Mick Avery often rivaled, if not surpassed, his scraps with his brother Ray. Dave Davies sets the record straight. The Kinks' fights have been blown up out of proportion over the years. Me and Mick wanted to kill each other, but I love him too. Ray and I were so different. We still are. When you look back, you see how those differences complemented each other. You sometimes need things to go wrong before they go right. It didn't always work, but when it did, boom, we had something. Prolific is an understatement for the Kinks, who released a whopping 24 albums over their career. Interestingly, albums like the Village Green Preservation Society and Arthur, which initially failed to make waves in the late 60s, are now hailed as the band's finest. Dave reflects, "We were always experimenting. Not all of those experiments worked or were understood. Village Green was an important album. It could have been our last album and it felt like the end when we were making it, but it was the beginning. I love it when something new grows out of what you think is the end. That's like nature." And in case you're wondering, yes, Dave chuckles at sounding like a hippie these days. The once angry kid has matured into a gentle soul, happily showing off pictures of his black and white rescue cat, Jolene. As he puts it, certain animals know what's going on a lot more than people. Cats are healers. Decked out in a lilac paisley patterned scarf with his shoulder-length silver hair mostly hidden under a purple beanie, Dave looks every bit the bohemian. He travels extensively with his girlfriend of 11 years, singer-photographer Rebecca G. Wilson. And amidst all this, the father of 8 emphasizes how his children constantly teach me, reminding me of love and that kindness is so important. Dave Davies can't help but grin when reminiscing about the wild early days of the Kinks. When I saw girls dancing to our music and screaming at us, I thought, we must be all right. Those fans were learning how to express themselves, like we were in the band. It was wonderful to be a part of a generational experiment that worked. Amidst the chaos, Dave is quick to acknowledge the crucial role played by his older brother Ray's lyrics in the Kinks' success. Ray was able to take anything people said, even me telling him shut the hell up, and write it down in a way that made you think, wow, that's clever. Ray shaped cultural advances through our music. Yet success came with its own set of challenges. Banned from the US for 4 years between 1965 and 1969 due to financial disputes with promoters, the Kinks faced hurdles that prevented them from achieving global success on par with their contemporaries. A slew of cheap compilations in their later years didn't do justice to their legacy. However, a West End musical titled Sunny Afternoon, which ran from 2014 for 2 years, and a new 2-part best-of compilation titled The Journey have emerged as icons, reminding a new generation of fans about the Kinks' magic. You Really Got Me. Let's take a trip back to 1964 when a single song not only put the Kinks on the map, but also rewrote the rules of rock and roll. Enter You Really Got Me, a track that didn't just make waves, it created an earthquake with its scorching guitar tone. This legendary hit wasn't the original plan. When Ray Davies penned it in March 1964, it was meant as a laid-back tribute to blues legends like Lead Belly and Big Bill Broonzy. However, fate had other plans. The game changer was none other than Dave Davies, whose rebellious spirit and guitar prowess would transform the song into a groundbreaking piece of rock history. Dave, armed with his guitar, decided to ditch the original script. He took a saxophone line intended for the song and unleashed it on his guitar with raw, erratic power chords. The result? A sound that was far from the initial laid-back jazz blues concept. The song began to evolve, taking on a more energetic and edgy persona. Now, even with the driving guitar part in play, the song wasn't quite there yet. When the Kinks hit the studio to record it in June 1964, the first version was slower, less emphatic, and drowned in reverb by producer Shel Talmy. But little did they know, they were on the brink of a revolution. Well, it's all about the Kinks and their earth-shattering anthem, You Really Got Me. This track wasn't just a hit, it was a seismic shift that redefined the very essence of rock music. Now let's give credit where credit's due. Dave Davies, the genius behind the guitar that rocked the world. Here's what Dave did. He took a razor blade to his amplifier's speaker cone, creating a distorted, aggressive sound that would become the heartbeat of You Really Got Me. This wasn't just a guitar riff, it was a sonic revolution. The impact? Oh, it's colossal. You Really Got Me didn't just climb the charts, it bulldozed through them. The raw energy and aggression struck a chord with audiences, making it not just a song, but a statement. And it doesn't stop there. The Kinks' sonic wizardry didn't just influence bands, it birthed entire genres. Heavy metal and punk rock owe a tip of the hat to the groundbreaking technique known as the Kinks sound. This wasn't just music, it was a cultural movement. The British invasion? Well, you can thank the Kinks for turning it up a notch. Their unique sound became the battle cry of the invasion, setting them apart from the rest. You Really Got Me wasn't just a hit in the 60s, it's a timeless classic that continues to echo through the halls of rock history. The controversy and the problems surrounding. Time to go back to the 1964 when You Really Got Me was just a twinkle in Ray Davies' musical eye. Surprise, surprise, it started as a piano tune with a serious jazz vibe. Yes, you heard it right, jazz. According to the archives in the book The Kinks All Day and All of the Night by Doug Hinman, Ray cooked up the song on a piano, leaning into those jazzy notes. In an interview with the now-defunct Record Mirror, he spilled the beans, revealing that the original plan was a light, jazzy tune. Picture the Kinks in their early days jamming around with melodies for hours. This is where it gets really interesting. Legend has it that Dave Davies, the dreamer of the band, had a vision that this jazzy concoction would be a hit. They tested it out in a Manchester club, and lo and behold, it worked like a charm. A week later, they took it to the studio. Ray Davies, the jazz fanatic? Who would have thought? He opens up confessing that at the time, he was all about that jazzy life. In his own words, I wanted it to be a jazzy type tune because that's what I liked at the time. And here's a juicy tidbit. Dave spills that Ray was vibing with the legendary Jerry Mulligan, an American jazz maestro. In fact, You Really Got Me drew inspiration from Mulligan's magic. But wait a minute, the record label wasn't exactly quick to catch the jazz train. It took several months for them to see the potential in this saxophone hook-infused gem. The rest, as they say, is history, but a jazzy one to be precise. So remember when we were all about that jazz with You Really Got Me? Well, turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg, because what happened next in the Kinks saga is like a plot twist in a rock and roll novel. Ray spills the beans, sharing that the record label Big Shots were skeptical. They thought the live version was cool, but doubted it could be tamed into a studio record. But then here comes Dave Davies playing the sax line with a fuzz guitar. The magic happens, and according to Ray, it took this song a step further. Jazz to fuzz guitar. It's quite the evolution. What's even more amazing is that Dave's iconic guitar riff was a pure accident. Dave himself admits, I thought this is where we're going to go. It gave a platform for Ray's writing. A bit of chaos in the mix, and voila, a rock masterpiece was born. Ray tells us about the original vibe, describing it as a Gregorian chant. And guess what? The secret sauce of You Really Got Me lies in Ray's genius use of a bisexual chord. Yes, you heard it right. Ray explains, to this day when I play a G chord, I bar it in such a way that it's neither major nor minor. It's like a bisexual chord. That's the secret of You Really Got Me. Who knew chords had orientations, right? But wait, there's more. In a revelation to Q magazine in 2016, Ray shares that the lyrics were inspired by a mysterious girl at a Piccadilly club. With lips reminiscent of Francois Hardy, this mysterious muse danced her way into Ray's heart. I wrote You Really Got Me for her, even though I never met her, he confesses. Talk about love at first sight, or sound. So, you know that iconic riff that practically defines rock music? Well, the story behind You Really Got Me just keeps getting wilder. Turns out, the Kinks had to jump through some hoops to make sure it hit our eardrums in all its glory. Ray Davies, the wordsmith of the duo, revealed about the song's genesis in a Rolling Stone interview. I just remembered this one girl dancing, he shared. Sometimes you're so overwhelmed by the presence of another person, and you can't put two words together. A love song for street kids, according to Dave Davies. They're not going to wine and dine you, even if they know how to chat you up. They say, I want you, come here. Well, that explains the raw energy. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The Kinks had to practically beg the label to let them cut You Really Got Me. They were in the studio working on a bunch of other tunes when they slipped in the demo for this now legendary track. Ray talked about the early recording, describing it as way out with a funny sort of ending. Apparently, it was much busier and slower, a far cry from the explosive hit we know today. Producer Shel Talmy weighed in, revealing that the original recording was a bluesy masterpiece, a whole different vibe from what we got. If you picture the riff, you'll see that it goes really well with blues, Talmy explained. It was extremely good and a totally different concept from the one that eventually came out. We all liked it at the time, decided to try it the other way, and then decided the later version should be the one that came out. And that, my friends, was the birth of the unforgettable You Really Got Me that rocked the world. So, you know how we all grooved to the unmistakable riff of You Really Got Me? Well, turns out it almost didn't sound the way we know and love it today. Ray Davies revealed the unreleased demo, calling it overproduced with good intention by Shel Talmy, the producer. But here's the kicker. Ray wanted that raw, unpolished sound, the character of the Kinks shining through. It's like they say, sometimes less is more, especially when it comes to rock and roll. And oh boy, did they have to fight for it. The label was dead set on releasing the slower version of the song. In a high-stakes showdown, the future with the label hung in the balance, dependent on the success of You Really Got Me. Ray reminisced, "We fought and eventually got the version we wanted out." Talk about a hard-fought victory. Fast forward to later years, and Van Halen paid homage to this rock anthem with their own cover in 1978. It wasn't just a cover, it was a tribute to the guitar gods. Eddie Van Halen's rendition hit number 21 on the Billboard Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart in 2020 following his passing. The legacy of the Kinks. It's time to discuss the Kinks' approach to music.
I looked up in the corner, this funny shaped
It wasn't just about songs.
guitar.
It was like they were painting musical vignettes. Unlike their counterparts like the Beatles, the Kinks didn't just stick to pop. They were like mad scientists mixing music hall, rock and roll, blues, and folk. Imagine this eclectic fusion spiced up with a dash of small-town theatrical irony. They weren't after easy melodies, they were crafting a unique rhythm, cadence, and pace. It was almost rebellious, sprinkled with that unmistakable Kinks arrogance. And you can't talk about the Kinks without giving a nod to their modest yet potent use of the guitar, a key element in shaping the garage rock genre. Enter You Really Got Me, the rebel anthem of their album. That riff, that unmistakable rumble, has echoed through the ages, finding its way into countless rock records. It's like the DNA of aggression in music. And hey, did you know the Kinks practically pioneered the concept album in the rock opera? Ray Davies, the genius behind the pen, emerges as one of the greatest composers of rock music. His compositions weren't just songs, they were like little frescoes, intricate caricatures of British social life. Perhaps it's because they weren't your typical adolescent tunes that the Kinks didn't achieve mass idolization, but for those who truly listened, they discovered musical brilliance. They were practically a small institution of British society. It's Ray Davies, the mastermind, as a rock and roll Balzac and Dickens rolled into one. Satirical, sentimental, comic, melancholic, nostalgic, and oh so affectionate. Hailing from the Muswell Hill neighborhood, they were like the oddballs in a city buzzing with the Beatlemania. Their beat wasn't just about rhythm and blues, it tapped into the centuries-old tradition of British music hall and light music. They weren't trying to be the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, they carved their own third way in rock and roll. Unlike the Beatles' cloying excesses, the Kinks offered a sound that was clear, simple, and harmonically conservative, but never trite. It was like they were saying, hey, let's be progressive without diving into the harmonic deep end, and let's be harmonically conservative without being boring. They were the peacekeepers, steering clear of the dirty and twisted sounds of the Rolling Stones and the violent, angular vibes of The Who. It was more than just a melody. Their music had a theme behind it. Each track was like a frivolous song sketch, carrying on the legacy of Buddy Holly. Playful, unique arrangements, unexpected rhythms, and a theme that painted vivid pictures. And now we uncovered the untold story of how Dave Davies and the Kinks gave birth to heavy metal. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to share your favorite moments in the comments below. For more exciting videos, subscribe to RetroTune TV and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.